Who all are there? Just tell me.
Thank you all for joining us in this session on Armistice Day. The Zoroastrian Trust Funds of Europe believe that through peace and harmony, we can be stronger together for the good of all people and the ecosystem. And so we send positive thoughts of good health, security, and peace for all people and for the ecosystem in every part of the world. This session is being recorded for sharing. And the aim is to help appreciate everyone who contributes to and builds peace. Importantly, we are paying respect to all those armed forces personnel and their families and network who have served and sacrificed through time, building and maintaining peace. In every faith, there is the concept of progress and removing discord. In the Zoroastrian faith, it's called Fraspayo Kedram. And while pain and humanity suffering hurts everybody, we believe each person does their best to contribute to good health and peace. We accept we are interlinked through our minds. So when our mind has thoughts of peace, we feel we can contribute to peace on earth. And we're very grateful to all our speakers today and over the years who have contributed to our coming together so that we can give gratitude to the armed forces. Today we have Major General Nauza Patel, Colonel Behram Sahukar, Daniel Wheatley, and Jarul Rammohan Panthaki as our speakers. But more than speakers, they're people to guide our thoughts towards gratitude to the armed forces. Last year, we had Major General Cyrus Pitawala, Brigadier Behram Panthaki, Zenobia Panthaki, and Dr. Hormuz Nikolwala. Previous year, Dr. Shehnaz Kama and Shreyas Pardiwala. And before that, Lord Karan Bilimoria and Air Chief Marshal Fali Major. Let's start today's session with Major General Nauza B. Patel. Major General Patel got commissioned into the Army in the Corps of Engineers in 1972 after undergoing 4 years of military training. He's a mechanical engineer with a degree from the College of Military Engineering, Pune, with a Master's in Science and Defense Studies from Madras University, and then a Management Studies degree, a Master's, from Osmania University. He has served in counter-insurgency operational areas of Punjab, Jammu and Kashmir. My dad would correct me and say the Punjab, Jammu and Kashmir, Sri Lanka, and probably other places, and high-altitude areas of Ladakh and Sikkim, apart from the forward areas. Retired from service in 2009, he's a medal winner at the World Mustache Competition held in Berlin in October 2005 and runs 2 military hobby clubs in Secunderabad, the Dramatics Club and the Cycling Club. Over to you, sir, for your thoughtful share.
Thank you very much, Dr. Karishma Koka. At the outset, I wish to thank Dr. Karishma Koka and ZTFE for giving me the honor and the pleasure to be a speaker at this webinar marking Armistice Day. Thank you for your kind introduction, Doctor. I may just say a few words to emphasize the military legacy which my family runs. I was in the army, my father was in the army, my brother was in the army, my son is in the army, my daughter-in-law is in the navy, and 2 of my maternal uncles were in the armed forces. So the armed force were in the air force. So the armed forces blood runs through our family. The topic given to me today to speak for 7 minutes is, I'm quoting verbatim, role of armed forces in maintaining peace, caring for safety of people, and serving during natural disasters. The role of Indian armed forces is to defend nation against external aggression, as also to carry out internal security duties and aid the civil administration in maintaining peace in times of turbulence and during natural and other calamities. We also have a very big role in peacetime of nation building, which I will dwell a little later. Coming to internal security duties, during the internal disturbances in the country, we may be called upon to maintain peace through patrolling the area or carrying out flag marches show as a show or demonstration of force. Coming to counterinsurgency role, which is a very major role our armed forces play during the peacetime. We play vital role in stabilization of counterinsurgency environment, thereby facilitating return of democratically elected state governments, be it in Punjab, Jammu and Kashmir, or our northeastern states. Coming to the UN peacekeeping force, Indian troops have one of the largest contributors to the UN peacekeeping. And we have played a very vital role in stabilizing unrest through stabilizing unrest through the UN mandate. We have seen our role in UN mission in Korea, Congo, Somalia, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Lebanon, Iraq, and so on. As far as disaster relief is concerned, I would like to just point out a few geographical features which are of great importance to understand this as far as our country is concerned. India is a vast country encompassing whole lot of different terrain. Starting from glacial terrain, we have the Siachen Glacier, which is the highest battlefield in the world. And battles are fought there at heights of 25 to 28,000 feet. Then we have high altitude areas. Then we have jungle areas. Then we have plains in the hinterland. Then we have deserts and also the coastal region. Another geographical point which I would like to stress on is that the Himalayan ranges are about 440 million years old as compared to the Alps, which is about 65 million years old. So ours being a very young mountain range, it is still not fully stabilized as compared to the Alps. Therefore, roads and villages along our northern regions are susceptible to landslide, mudslides, avalanches, and earthquakes. And that is where the armed forces, come to aid the civil authorities. During such times, the armed forces are called upon to carry out aerial evacuation of stranded people, also to repair and construct new lines of communication, including very quick laying military bridges which are strong enough till the time the civil administration comes and builds concrete bridges. Another geographical feature as far as India is concerned for natural disaster is the Bay of Bengal. Now, Bay of Bengal is very cyclone prone compared to the Arabian Sea. That is why our east coast states of Orissa, Andhra Pradesh, West Bengal are extremely cyclonic. Here again, flood relief operations are a very important role for the armed forces. I remember during late 70s, I had gone for a flood relief. The water was so high in that village that people went up from their rooftops of the villages and were sitting on treetops. We had to literally pluck them from the trees, put them in the boat, and take them to safety places. Also, our armed forces are called upon to help friendly countries during natural calamities there too. For example, recently we went to aid of during aid to earthquake in Turkey, then tsunami in Sri Lanka also. Even if you recollect, during COVID times, for transportation of medical supplies, all far-flung areas of Africa and other places, our Air Force carried these supplies. We were also involved with evacuation of Indian nationals from war zones. If you recollect, during Iraq war, the Middle East, Kuwait, and now lately in Ukraine also. So this is as far as natural calamities and artificial man-made disasters like wars, our armed forces play a very significant role. Now coming to sports, my next point is about the contribution of armed forces in sports and games. In all formats, the Asian Games, the Commonwealth Games, the Olympic Games. To give you an example of some of our sportsmen, you have Dhyan Chand of hockey. I must just tell you a story about Dhyan Chand, a fact. Dhyan Chand was such a visionary and such a they said he was a magician with the hockey stick. During dribbling, the ball never left his hockey stick. It looked as though the ball has been attached there. So in 1939, when India won the gold medal in Berlin, Hitler, while giving the award, very grudgingly he had to give because India broke the myth of Aryan supremacy, so called. And he told Dhyan Chand was an ordinary soldier. He told him, if you were in the German army, I would have made you a major. So that was the skill of Dhyan Chand. Then we have other legends like Milkha Singh and Neeraj Chopra in athletics. We have Rathore and Jitu Raj in shooting and Dinko Singh in boxing. This is our continuous contribution to the armed force. Now come to the national nation building, which is my last point of aid of the armed forces role in peacetime. This is actually a work in continuous progress. There are two aspects to this. One, the intangible effects on nature, nation building. Intangible, you can't physically see the results. This is seen by people through the ethos, the discipline, the camaraderie of the forces and their entirely apolitical nature. An armed forces personnel is loyal to the government who rules at that time, irrespective of which party that government is. As a force, we represent all religions, all regions based on pure merit and respect for all, with no reservations whatsoever. This reflects the national identity. The second is the tangible effect, the results of which can be seen by everyone on nation building. Now, the armed forces run an organization known as the National Cadet Corps, NCC, which imparts discipline and motivation to the youth studying in colleges. It is also a very good stepping stone for youngsters to join the armed forces. Then there is the Border Roads Organization, we call them the BRO, which is part of the armed forces, which is a great force multiplier for infrastructure development all along our borders, from the states of Gujarat and Rajasthan and Punjab in the west, to Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh in the north, to northeastern states. They are actually providing the lifeline for transportation of men, material, and resources. They construct top quality roads, bridges, and tunnels all along our vast borders in most inhospitable terrain. Now, I would like my 7 minutes is coming to an end. So, I would like to end my talk on a very cheerful note, a very heartening note, a very inspiring note, and a very motivating note. And that is that through varied opinion polls conducted over years in our country by various organizations, our armed forces stand first out of about 60 organizations as most valuable, most creditable, and most lovable. So this is a
Wow.
great feather in our
No doubt.
cap.
That's fantastic.
And I will now end with a small thought process of mine, which is if the age limit by government to join the army is increased beyond 19 years to 75 years, then I'll be the first one to join army again. Thank you very much, Dr. Koka, and all the other panelists and spectators.
Excellent. Very good.
Thank you very much, Major General Nauza Patel. Key word that stood out for me. He was an ordinary soldier. Is there ever an ordinary soldier? Each one is extraordinary. Each one is so special. Let's move on to the next speaker so we can hear more. Colonel Behram Adi Sahukar served for 33 years in the Indian Army's Parachute Regiment. A military free-fall paratrooper, he commanded a Special Forces Parachute Battalion and retired from the Defense Intelligence Agency's Counter-Terrorism Division. Following his father, Brigadier Adi Sahukar's legacy, who served in World War II across North Africa, Sicily, Italy, and Greece, Colonel Sahukar saw action in the 1971 India-Pakistan War and served on India's operational borders with Pakistan and China. He specializes in counter-terrorism and insurgency. He was a research fellow at the Institute for Defense Studies and Analyses and held the Cariappa Chair of Excellence in the United Services Institution of India. Colonel Behram Sahukar also served as adjunct professor terrorism studies at the George C. Marshall Center in Germany and has lectured internationally on terrorism and security. He is a graduate of the National Defense Academy, the Indian Military Academy, the Defense Services Staff College with an MSc in Defense Studies, and holds an MPhil degree in International Studies from the Jawaharlal Nehru University. Colonel Behram Sahukar is a member of the World Zoroastrian Organization in London and also of the Victory Services Club, London. Colonel Sahukar is married to Dr. Rita Levell, an international health specialist. He has given his email address here and is happy for you to contact him if you have more questions. As we focus on peacetime operations, let us all give a thought, all those who have served, so that we can enjoy the peace we enjoy today. Let us give a thought for all those who maintain human rights that we take for granted in our everyday operations. Have they got the same freedoms through their life? Think of the limitations on armed forces' lives. Over to you, Behram, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Koka. Thank you for the Zoroastrian Trust Funds of Europe, Jaro Auntie. And I would also like to thank Brigadier Behram Pantagi, as well as Mr. Kashi Shroff for lending me his book on Valiant Parsis, which I referenced a little bit to know a little bit about our own Zoroastrians who had served in the armed forces. And I'm happy to be here and share my thoughts about the Indian military and its role in war and in peace. I'm grateful. I don't know if can you all see me fully or?
Yeah,
I'm
we
grateful.
can. We can.
Well, I'm
At least
grateful.
I can.
All right. Okay. All right. So now I can see you. Oops. Sorry.
Yes, Colonel Behram, we can see you clearly. Please continue.
All right. So I'm thankful to General Patel for covering some of the topics that Dr. Koka had asked me to cover, that is UN peacekeeping and humanitarian relief. As far as the Armistice Day is concerned, and the self-sacrifice of the armed forces and civilians to the cause of war and bringing stability and peace in the future, I'd like to share just a few words. Unfortunately, before the armistice was signed and came into effect, the armistice was signed, as we all know, on the 11th of November, but it was signed not at 11 o'clock in the morning, but at 5 o'clock, around about 5:10 in the morning in a railway carriage in Compiègne in France. And it was to come into effect at 11 o'clock on November 11th, as we know. So between the time that the armistice was actually signed between the Allies and the Germans, there were, unfortunately, and it came into effect at 11 o'clock, there were 2,200 casualties on both sides. Those men died in the interim period between the signing of the armistice in France and, of course, between the armistice came into effect at 11 o'clock. And armistice means only to cease fire. It was not a peace treaty, and there was always a chance of the armistice being broken by one side or the other. Fortunately, that did not happen, and the peace treaty was finally signed at Versailles, again in France, the following year in 1919. Now, this was the Great War, and everybody thought that this was a war to end all future wars. Unfortunately, it did not. As we all know, that the First World War and the conditions laid by the Allies against Germany was the reason why the resurgence of Germany and the start of the Second World War under Adolf Hitler. Now, the Second World War led to 80 million casualties. The First World War led to about 8 million casualties. It's a horrendous figure, that's why they was called the World War. Now, the role of the Indian Army in the First and Second World Wars contributed a great deal to the war effort, though the First World War was fought mainly the large amount was mainly in Europe, and troops had to be moved from the dusty plains of the Northwest Frontier Province into the trenches of Flanders fields and in France. This was in 30th of September 1914 that the first troops were left, 2 divisions of the Indian Armed Forces left for France. And they were moved into the trenches in their khaki clothing. That was September. It gets cold in France, it rains, and they were moved into the trenches in their summer dress, as we call it. And then they were clothed and then they were fed. After about a year or two, the cavalry regiments remained in France, but the main body of the Indian forces were moved to the Middle East and, of course, Mesopotamia, as we know, where Mr. Shroff's father also fought and took part. That was the major area of operations for the Indian forces. Now, the contribution of the Indian Army, the then Indian Army, or the British Indian Army, as some people call it, was tremendous to the war effort. And Field Marshal Claude Auchinleck, who was the commander-in-chief in the Second World War of the Indian forces, said that without the contribution of the Indian Army, it is unlikely that Britain would have come through victorious in First World War and the Second World War. So there's a great thing. General Auchinleck was the commander-in-chief when India became independent. He was in India. And then he was also part of the Indian Army, along with Field Marshal William Slim, who I'll talk about a little bit later. And the Indian Army, when you pass out Sanders, the Indian Army took only the top 10% of the officers for commissioning. The rest went to the normal British Army. So it was a select band of officers, and they proved themselves with their men in all the conflicts. So the main thing was the contribution of the Indian Army to Middle East as well as to Europe, and it also served in Eritrea. It also served in Tanganyika, that is old Tanganyika, today is Tanzania, and served in the First World War, even in China, a small contingent. And the contribution was almost 1.5 million men, out of which about 80,000 men were given their lives up for the supreme sacrifice. And in the Second World War, 2.5 million men were called to the colors, or they volunteered. And I would like to emphasize this point that both in both wars, though it was a colonial army to start with, and Britain was the paramount power in India, every man who served in the British Indian Army or Indian Army were volunteers. Nobody was conscripted, nobody was forced. They came, as the book by Philip Mason says, because it was a matter of honor. And that's a very nice book by Philip Mason, A Matter of Honor, the story of the Indian Army and its men. Of course, the men play a great part along with their officers for the ultimate success. I would like to repeat what we know from the ethos of the Indian Army, that which is written in Chetwood, and I'll refer to my notes. I should know it by heart, but I'm having now more gray hair and less gray cells, so I do need to refer to my notes once in a while. And we remember this every time you walk into Chetwood Hall in the military academy. The safety, honor, and welfare of your country come first, always and every time. The honor, welfare, and comfort of the men you command come next. Your own ease, comfort, and safety come last, always and every time. And the motto of the Indian Military Academy is wisdom and valor. Of the National Defense Academy is service before self. At the West Point, it is duty, honor, and country. And the ethos beyond all this is the fact of honor, integrity, professionalism, and that you are serving basically your country and your men. And that is where the Armistice Day, the idea of self-sacrifice comes in. Many uh, arches, memorials have been made by people who lived after the soldiers have died. The most important one in the First World War that commemorates the Indian soldiers at Neuve-Chapelle in France, built by Sir Herbert Baker, the same person who designed the South Block and North Block and the Parliament House in Delhi, along with Rashtrapati Bhavan with Edwin Lutyens. And so they are remembered. And there is of course, a saying that let not those who come after us forget us. And in most of these war memorials, there is an inscription that says that their name liveth forevermore. So we do remember our fallen comrades, and we emulate to look after them and their memory. And I should mention again, a British thing that started was the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, which came in the wake of the First World War, because many people who died in the fields of the First World War, whether in Europe or Africa or in China or the Middle East, some of them could not be repatriated. The bodies remained where it was. And so therefore, the Commonwealth War Graves Commission said that, okay, we'll make a cemetery in those areas for the fallen dead and respect them and with honor. Now I come to the fact of the unknown soldier, because that is the more important thing about Armistice Day celebrations at the Cenotaph in London or at Westminster Abbey or even in India. And we have memorials, which I'll talk when Dr. Koka shows us the slides. So those things are, the unknown soldier is just a symbolic soldier, a body of a soldier who could not be identified because of the artillery shelling or decomposing in the field. And then he was honored for all the wars, initially for the First World War, but then the soldier represents fallen dead in all the wars to date. And he's given a place of honor even higher than kings and monarchs. That's what he said. And that's why in Westminster Abbey, they say that the fallen soldier or the unknown warrior is buried amongst kings and dukes in Westminster Abbey. In France, he's under the Arc de Triomphe. And in the cenotaph, there's no body. Cenotaph means a place, a tomb without a body. But that's a symbolic thing for the unknown soldier, the cenotaph in London. And so they're remembered. Now, post-independence India has fought in many wars. Immediately after we got our independence, we fought in the 1947 war, where my battalion took part in it. And we have a battle honor of Shelatang, because in the 3 Para Battalion, my own battalion, which was raised in 1813, long time ago, was instrumental, along with the 1st Sikh Battalion, to save Srinagar airfield from falling into enemy hands. The unit was airlifted from Delhi in Dakota aircraft as soon as the Pakistani raiders attacked us in Kashmir area, and restored the situation, and won 2 gallantry awards, the Mahavir Chakras, and we lost some soldiers dead. In fact, yesterday was 7th November was the date in 1947 when my battalion took part in this operation, and we commemorate the fallen, and we resolve to work to ensure that they are not forgotten. And yesterday was the commemoration day that my unit commemorated for this battle honor day of Shelatang or Srinagar. So that's another thing. After the 47 war, India was involved, of course, in the 65 war against Pakistan. Many were killed in that, but India came through. The Para Brigade, my regiment, fought at the Ishogil Canal to try to break through to Lahore. They had limited success. And then, of course, the 71 war with Bangladesh. And between the 65 and the 71 war, India had a slight reverse in its war with China. The men did their duty, but unfortunately, they were sent ill-equipped to the borders to fight with China in the high Himalayas in 1962. But a Paramveer Chakra, that is the equivalent of the Victoria Cross in India, was won. Some were captured. Many lie dead in the mountains, in the Himalaya mountains in 1962. And then India's honor was regained in 1971 when the Bangladesh was formed. And I'm proud to say that 2nd Para Battalion jumped short of Dhaka to speed up the operations. That was led overall by our own Sam Bahadur, Sam Manekshaw, who was the chief, who had moved there from the Eastern Command, where my father was his senior staff officer, where they laid out the plans, initial plans for the 71 war. There was a big success, and a new country was declared called Bangladesh. Now, India had the option of amalgamating Bangladesh into its own territory. It was East Bengal in the old days, but the government wisely decided that no, we won the battle. We've created a new country. We should give the country back to its population, and which India did. All right, so much for that. Now, if I can ask, after the 71 war, the major other war was the Kargil War, a short-lived war of 1999. After 1 year after India exploded the nuclear bomb and became a nuclear power, followed soon by Pakistan. That was one of the toughest operations that I have seen in our army, where troops had to climb sheer vertical cliffs to take down the enemy that had infiltrated across our border in the Dras Kargil region. And however, we came through. The Air Force and the Army worked in conjunction. Now, that is the good part about the National Defense Academy. It is a joint services academy where we start our career in the military together. And the joint services nest came in. Again, the idea came from Field Marshal Sir Claude Auchinleck. And today it is near Pune in a place called Khadakwasla. And we are all grateful to our predecessors to have formed the Joint Services Academy called the National Defense Academy. Because now one knows one counterpart in the Air Force, in the Navy. If something has to be done, we pick up the phone or send a message, and normally it is done. And it's easier for today's wars to be fought together. Now, if I can ask Dr. Koka to start with the slides, I'd appreciate it. The first slide is General Thamaya. General K.S. Thamaya, I'm proud to say, was commissioned into my own regiment, the Hyderabad regiment, then became Kumaon regiment. He was the chief of the army staff, as is mentioned in the slide, from 57 to 61. But he was also contributed to UN peacekeeping operations. Initially, in the International Control Commission, which came in after the Korean War ended. General Patel mentioned the Korean War, where the two Mahavir Chakras were won by medical personnel, because India did not take part in the fighting. It took part in, as the Maroon Angels they were called. The parafield ambulance jumped in Korea along with the Americans and stayed there for 3 whole years. And after the war ended, the Korean War ended, there was the International Repatriation Commission or Control Commission, and General Thamaya was the head of that, the Indian Custodian Force, as a Major General. Thereafter, after he retired from the army, he was selected by the Secretary General to command the UN peacekeeping force in Cyprus. And unfortunately, he died while he was in harness with his boots on. Next slide, please. This is our own Adi Tarapur, a fine soldier from Pune, where I am now settled and belong to the Pune Horse, a very, very proud old regiment. He won the Paramveer Chakra, which is the highest, the Indian equivalent of the Victoria Cross, which Queen Victoria instituted in 1857 after the Crimean War. Won that as a colonel, he's the highest ranking officer today to have won the Paramveer Chakra, living or dead. It was a posthumous award. He was killed in action. The Pune Horse has its standard and its motto. There's a standard that they captured along with the Anglo-Persian War with the British at the Battle of Khusab. And this standard has an open hand, is the hand of Fatima. And the motto of the Pune Horse is that the hand of God is above all things. We value religion and God a lot. It's very, very important. It's commonly said that there are hardly any atheists when you are in the trenches and when the shells are falling amongst you. You believe in God and you believe in your mother, and you pray to both to save you from that shell. So General Tarapur is very well respected, and to say something that I almost joined his regiment when I was a cadet, but I wanted to be in the forefront and wear the maroon berets. I volunteered for the parachute regiment. And very lucky that I got it from when I passed out of the IMA. Otherwise, my next choice would have been the Pune horse, or 17 horse as it's called now. Next, please. Next, please. Yes. This is the War Memorial. It was initially called the All India War Memorial. Today is called the India Gate War Memorial in New Delhi. We all know it. It's a very prominent, beautiful archway built by Sir Edwin Lutyens, as usual, our person who designed New Delhi. And the foundation stone was laid in 1921 to commemorate the fallen in the First World War and the Third Afghan War. And about 83,000 names are inscribed, those of all the fallen soldiers, both British and Indian and Gurkha, inside this memorial. And the top of the memorial states India right here. And out here, all the areas where the Indian Army. Is there someone? Okay. And sorry. Can I go back to India Gate? All right. Can I go back to, all right. So yeah, and this one has a canopy out here where today Subhash Chandra Bose's statue is standing, but it had the King Emperor statue, King George V statue was here under this canopy or the Chhatri. Next, please. Next, please. Yeah. This is the war memorial that the Indian government made. Up to 1971 war, the India Gate was the war memorial where the Amar Jyoti Jawan and a reverse rifle with a helmet was given to respect all the war dead. The Indian government made this then in Delhi in 2019 and transferred the eternal flame that was burning under the India Gate to this area. It's a very beautiful, big war memorial commemorating the war dead in free India, for the free India, and not pre-India. And the India Gate now represents the people who died under the British colonial Raj. Then, next, please. This one I thought I should really mention. This is a small war memorial at the Karegat colony in Mumbai, which was actually built part of the Karegat colony with Jamshedji Jijiboy. And I believe he's the one who inaugurated this war memorial. There's not very much information one can get about it, but it has the Ashok Sarovar right here and has the names of the Zoroastrians who died in the First World War. And it is inside the colony in Mumbai on Hughes Road, if I'm pronouncing the name correctly. Hughes Road or Hughes Road. Hughes Road is the one all the taxi wallahs know in Bombay. You say Hughes Road, they don't know where to go. So this one, every year on Farbudin Road and Farbudin Maino, that is our Old Souls Day, prayers are said and wreaths are laid by the local residents, and sometimes a senior officer from the Navy, because Navy is based in Bombay, they pay the respects to Zoroastrians who fell in the First World War and who are commemorated here in Mumbai. Thank you. And is there one more or? Yes. This is the last slide. This is the one of Battle of Kohima. I would like to leave this with you. During a poll in the UK, Kohima, they were asked which is the greatest battle of Britain that you want to remember Britain by, the biggest battle that Britain commemorates. And we all thought they'll say Waterloo, but they selected Kohima, which is a town in Nagaland, today's Nagaland, but which stopped the German advance under Field Marshal Sir William Slim, Uncle Bill, who was known and loved by his troops and who led from the front and he wrote a beautiful book on the Burma campaign called Defeat into Victory. And it was during the defeat when the Japanese advanced and the Indian forces retreated that Field Marshal Manekshaw earned his military cross at the Chitang River Bridge. And so this has been left. Now it is lying in Kohima, and it says, when you go home, tell them of us and say, for your tomorrow, we gave our today. And it's a poignant story, and I'll leave you with this thought because I think my 10 minutes are also up. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Coker.
When you go home, tell them of us and say, for your tomorrow, we gave our today.
Thank you.
Thank you all for giving us A life where we can wake up in the morning knowing we can travel where we want to, walk the streets safely, catch a flight and cross borders without a thought for those people who protect the borders. Today, at least, and on Armistice Day, and tomorrow, Remembrance Day, may we give so much gratitude that for all the times we don't think of them, let these thoughts remain in the ether. Our next speaker today is Daniel Wheatley. Daniel is a very caring person, and I was fortunate to meet Daniel at the Houses of Parliament, at Westminster Abbey, at the House of Parliament rather, this year, at a Baha'i function to honor interfaith activity. And the Baha'is are doing a lot, especially for the youth, but also for the concept of reflection, self-study, and finding one's own path. Daniel Wheatley is a senior diplomatic officer at the Baha'i community of the United Kingdom and is also affiliated faculty at the London Programme Syracuse University. Daniel Wheatley lectures in sociology and political science, covering issues of diversity, migration, multiculturalism, religion and belief, human rights, and British social history. He teaches courses at the London programs of several United States universities, as well as guest lecturing at a number of other US and UK universities. He received a teaching award for Best Student Feedback Spring 2013 semester, and the Syracuse London Programme Teaching Award for Spring 2014. In 2020, Daniel was awarded the Arcadia University's Excellence in Teaching Award. Outside of academic work, Daniel serves as a diplomatic officer to the Baha'i community of the UK, advocating for human rights with the United Kingdom government. He serves as the clerk on working groups to several all-party parliamentary groups, supporting the work of cross-party groups in the United Kingdom Parliament. His recent research and publication output has included work on populism and growing forces of anti-globalism and freedom of religion or belief for minorized communities in the MENA region. Daniel Wheatley was a Mountbatten Scholar to the United World College of Southern Africa in Eswatini, Swaziland, before studying a BA in Classical Civilization and an MA in International Relations at the University of Kent, and further postgraduate studies in International Humanitarian Law at Birkbeck College. Thank you very much, Daniel, for sharing your thoughts today with us all. Over to you.
Well, firstly, let me make sure I time myself that I don't go over. Firstly, may I thank Zoroastrian Trust Funds of Europe, and particularly to Dr. Karishma for your most generous invitation. It is an honor to be here so close to the important commemorations of Remembrance Day with such distinguished veterans as Major General Patel and Colonel Sahukar. And indeed, you've mentioned my time of study in Eswatini, Swaziland. My Mountbatten Scholarship was bestowed through the British Legion, and it was in respect of my father's service in the Royal Artillery. I think this is an appropriate moment to note that all of us and all people in Britain, as we wear our poppies and as we hold silence for 2 minutes in our remembrances of our forebears and our families who made their service and many lost their lives, we should remember the 3.8 million soldiers, Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Zoroastrian, Christian, who served in the armed forces of what was then, of course, the British Indian Army, and our two illustrious speakers beforehand have made important reference to that. That is a matter, by the way, which is a section in my syllabi on multicultural London, noting the service of Indian soldiers in defence of these islands. And I very much align myself with the comments offered earlier that Britain's survival owed much to these heroic soldiers. My other area of work is as a member of the Baha'i community. And I know many of you here present will know the commemoration of the Haifa Gate, which I think Colonel Salkar has very kindly referred to, recalling the Battle of Haifa in September 2018, where forces under the command of General Allenby were dispatched to relieve the city of Haifa, which was then under Ottoman control. And in that city, the central figure of the Baha'i religion of that day, Abdul Baha, was at risk of execution by crucifixion. And it was Mysore and Jodhpur Lancer regiments conducting a heroic charge that relieved that city and saved the life of the central figure of my religion. And we commemorate and record their courage and their heroism and their sacrifice. One of the ideas that Dr. Karishma and I were discussing was this idea of the role of the military in collective security and ideas for global governance. And I was referring back to a period in my career and in the activities of the Baha'i community on the ideas of global governance. The Zoroastrian religion is the starting point of monotheism. It is through the teachings of the prophet Zoroaster that we have the idea of the one God. The Baha'i religion is a monotheistic religion that carries forward that idea, which echoes in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. But both Zoroastrians and Baha'is celebrate the festival of Nowruz, of a new dawn. And for many of us, the idea of a new dawn is not an annual idea, it is an idea of a new dawn, a new spring in human affairs. In 1995, we were a few years on from the end of the Cold War. I myself, with some of my work, had traveled to Russia, and this was the period where Sir Sridhar Rampal from Guyana and Dr. Ingvar Carlsson of Sweden convened the Commission on Global Governance. At the same time, the Baha'i international community produced a proposal to the United Nations noting the turning point of all nations. This was a springtime in human affairs. One of the fruits of that period was the International Criminal Court and the doctrine of the responsibility to protect. Of course, many of the young people that come into my classes and many of the young people that you may have in the Zoroastrian trust funds will observe the great crisis that we see in our world, the suffering in Yemen, Ukraine, Gaza, and of course Sudan, as we have seen the terrible suffering in Al-Fashir only this week. The Baha'i religion speaks of the idea of collective security. Well, collective security requires an expanded UN peacekeeping capacity, currently under the aegis of UN Charter powers contained in Chapter 6 and Chapter 7. Distinguished Major General Patel has noted the role of the Indian Armed Forces, who have been the single largest contributor towards UN peacekeeping, for which we thank them. The ideas of 1995 some seeds bore fruit, but some ideas did not seed fruit. 30 years on, we appear to be in a geopolitical winter. But just as we understand spring does not last forever, neither does winter. And at this time, perhaps we should reflect, where will we be when the next springtime, the next opportunity for collective security and peace in our world comes? And I have learned from my career that it is military professionals who offer huge reserves of knowledge and experience towards peacekeeping, and of course addressing environmental crises, as both Major General Patel and indeed Colonel Sarkar noted. And across the period when I worked on global governance, it was no accident that Brigadier Michael Harbottle, who served alongside Indian colleagues in Cyprus, and Lieutenant Colonel Larry Hollingworth, a Falklands veteran who went on to work in Bosnia, these two British Army officers offered learning for peacekeeping and refugee evacuation. So I think, in summary, the thinking from the Baha'i community is that there is an imperative necessity for collective security, that there must be some form of binding covenant in international law. With the current status of the United Nations, no one thinks we're near there. Colonel Sarkar, I think, noted the failure in World War I to accept the idea of the war to end all wars. And the League of Nations was not able to prevent the invasion of Abyssinia, the invasion of Poland. The high writings are very clear about this. Baha'u'llah at one point on collective security says, should anyone among you take up arms against another, rise ye all against him, for this is naught but manifest justice. We believe that there will be a new season, a new spring, a new Nowruz, and we can honor our military and veterans by remembering the lesson from Kohima, that those who gave their today for a better tomorrow. And we honor them best in building a tomorrow in which there is lasting peace. But actually, military veterans, with their knowledge and their capacities, such as those distinguished colleagues that we have here today, offer us some learning. It is an honor to be here with you, and it is an honor for me to honor my own family's sacrifice and the sacrifice of those noble soldiers from the Indian Army, without whom the freedoms that I enjoy today I might not have. And indeed, on the other side of my family, my mother was liberated from a prisoner of war camp by the heroism and courage of soldiers that were willing to take that risk. It is a great honor to be with you, and I thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniel. It's interesting to also remember that when there is a car stuck in a ditch, a child fallen down a well, or an elderly person stuck in the rain, as indeed my mother was after the event at Parliament, it is an armed forces officer or somebody with the same principles who often saves such people. And in this instance, it was Daniel who looked after my mum in the rain and held those values high. Thank you very much. Our next speaker today is my mum, Jaru Ram Mohan Ni Pantiki. Jaru is an alternative medical practitioner, educator, entrepreneur, life coach, beauty therapist, athlete, and researcher. A graduate in nursing, she served the poorest of the poor to the richest honorarily for the good of health and holistic development. As a learning and development mentor and co-founder of Ultimate Achievements Academy, Jaru catalyzes the growth and learning of individuals. She has also taught the Duke of Edinburgh Award classes in Bristol as a lecturer and classes at high school level, being a general and life insurance agent and inspector, and enjoys art, music, and nature painting. Jaru is the widow of late Commander Koka Ram Mohan, sister of Major Meenu Pantaki, and the daughter-in-law of late Dr. Colonel Koka Krishna Rao Naidu, Military Cross, with a bar. With a bar means a person is honored with that medal twice. In addition, Jaru is the granddaughter of Ervat Pestanji Noshirvanji Pantaki and the late Pantaki of Sir J.J. Agyari, and the daughter of the hard-working parents Noshirvan and Piroja Pantaki, who set up and managed the Parsi Dharamshala in Bangalore for 30 years with excellence and integrity. Over to Mummy for her talk.
Karishma has said most of the things that I would have introduced myself with. So there, I'd like to say that I have a very good experience of the military life. Right from the time my brother was enrolled in the army, he was in Khadakwasla in NDA, and I have visited NDA. I've talked to people there, all the soldiers there, and not just soldiers, various people from the armed forces, and learned a lot about the services. I've also visited Hyderabad, Golconda, when my brother was injured in the war. And that is a very interesting story I'd like to tell you. My brother was a major in the artillery. And he was deputed as Air OP during 65 war. That was a time when I was in UK, working over here. When he detected two major patent tanks just 50 yards away, he called out red on red to his own battalion. And one of the bullets probably came from the battalion only and shot him. He had several artillery shells, what do you call that? Splinters. Splinters in his body. He had several bullets all over his body, in his arms, in his cheek, and various other parts. And he fell from the tree where he was an Air OP. So when he fell, people thought that he was dead. So nobody bothered about him. They all pushed away. We were told, we were informed that they could not find him. He was lost in operations. He was not to be found. My mother panicked and called me immediately the moment she heard about it. And both of us set out to see him. Now, we were informed that he was in Chandigarh, but he was not at that time when we left, which was a few days later, till I could go there. And I was helped by each and everybody. I didn't have my visa to go there because they had banned people from going beyond Delhi. I had to go to Dr. Jivraj Mehta, who was the ambassador over here in UK. And very kindly, he helped me out and gave me the visa immediately, on the spot. And I went off to see my mother. Along with her, we sat off in the aircraft. On my next to my seat was one Brigadier Kapoor, who helped me out in every way, because I was very shocked and I was crying and, just keeping quiet and moaning away. He took pity on me. When we reached Delhi, he took us to his place, fed us, looked after us, he and his wife. They were very kind to us. Then he put us on the train after finding out that my brother was not in Chandigarh, but he was in Dehradun to recuperate. I believe he was operated on, and on his bullet, which was resting on his brain, and with a burr hole operation. And the bullet was taken out, but the splinters were all inside. Anyway, he was sent for recuperation, so we went to Dehradun. Brigadier Kapoor was so kind, so very kind. He even phoned the DGMS, General Masters in Dehradun, and informed him that some Parsis are coming to Dehradun for the son and the brother to recuperate. So general masters who used to visit my brother every single day, immediately came to the station with his wife to receive us and took us to his house. He made arrangements for us to stay in the nurses' quarters as guests, and so that we can be close to my brother after staying a few days at his place. When we stayed over there in the nurses' quarters, everybody was so respectful of us, so kind, so gentle and generous. I was allowed to look after my brother, being a nurse, 24 hours under observation when he was under observation. And after a month and a half over there, they sent us to Lucknow for further investigation and operation for my brother. Over there, all the way through, they were so very gentle and kind to my brother and to me as well. My mother had already left by then. And they looked after my brother hand and foot so, so well. And I also looked after him as I was allowed to look after him. But unfortunately, they could not remove the splinters which were inside the brain, very close to the vision area. So after about another 1 month or 1.5 months, they sent us back home. To cut the matter short, he recuperated in Bangalore in our home for a whole year, during which time I helped him with his memory, which he had completely lost. He could not even recognize my mother. By and by, slowly, we even went dancing. We used to sing songs. We used to talk. We used to do crossword puzzles. We used to play the Scrabble. And I used to teach him the words. Slowly, slowly, he learned to speak. Slowly, he learned to recognize letters and started talking properly. And by the time a year was over, he was back at work. His first posting after that was in Golconda, where I had also been, and I was looked after by the commander there. There was also another Colonel Kapoor there who looked after us. And they were all so respectful, so good, all the officers, all the higher-ups and everybody, even the soldiers, they were all so good and so respectful. I stayed there for a whole month to find out whether my brother was doing well, whether he was coping with things, and he was. So I went back. A few months later, they again sent us a telephone call saying my brother had a heart attack, which was not heart attack, it was something happened to his arm. It was dislocated. So my mother rushed me back to Golconda. I went there and found that there was nothing wrong with him but for his arm, and he was in the hospital. So there again I went and looked after him. Again, Colonel Kapoor looked after me very, very well. They looked after me hand and foot as though I was some VIP. They didn't have children, and I was very young. And that's it. They are really a class by themselves. In the peace times, People say, why are these officers and army people and forces people given such high pays? Why are they being looked after so well? Why are they given so many facilities and comforts in life? They don't seem to realize that even in peacetime, when something goes wrong in the country, like floods, like shortage of food, and various other calamities, Army, Navy, and Air Force are all there on their uh, toes all the time to serve the country. Their motto is to serve the country. Their religion is to serve the country. And that is how our peacetime people are looked after and kept safe and well. The doctors, the nurses, and the military hospitals are so very comforting and kind, and they look after the patients so well that even the best of hospitals in the town are not a patch on them. They are just excellent. They care personally. They think we are their own relatives, and then they look after us.
True.
I've had the experience myself when I once dislocated my arm and had to go to the hospital for an x-ray and all that. I've had an experience with everything, but unfortunately, we have other constraints in the services, and that is housing. Housing is very short. And we are posted from place to place. In 23 years of my husband's service, we were posted out 13 times. And every time we were posted out, we didn't get a place to live. So we had to double up with somebody and be at their mercy. They were all so kind to us, looked after us so well. I can never forget the kindness of the services and the way they have looked after us. They cared for us. Even in peacetime, they are so good to everybody. They care for the country. They care for the people. I have much more to say, but there I'll stop because Karishma has already said a lot.
Thank you, Mummy. With that thought, yes, the photograph on the left is my father, Commander Ram Mohan, and on the right, his father, Dr. Colonel Koka Krishna Rao.
I must talk about my father-in-law. He was injured in Italy. He had a bullet in his chest, but never spoke a word about it to anybody. We came to know about it later on, much later, from somebody else. A general told us about him. He had a military cross, and the Queen again gave him a second military cross and asked him to wear it immediately. It was really an honor to him. He was a doctor. He looked after his patients so well and was noted so well that even the Queen came to know him.
But nobody ever knew why he was, the details of what he was awarded for, other than very briefly, because that is the story of the armed forces. They do not speak. So let us give them gratitude. Let us speak for them. And let us remember that it is not just them who sacrifice. It is their entire family. It's not just the country they look after. It is the entire world. As it is said in India, the world is my family. Vasudeva Kutumbakam. And the armed forces religion, I suppose, is service before self.
We were married for 46 years, my husband
Thank
and
you
I.
very much, Mummy. Thank you very much. We should stop there and allow open the floor for discussion.
Okay.
So with that, let us open the floor for
Is
discussion.
Koshi talking?
We hope each one of you will have something to share. I'm going to spotlight the first person, Mrs. Zenobia Panteki. Over to you, Auntie.
Okay, thank you. No, I just wanted to say that, service life is wonderful. I endorse everything your mom said, but also it comes with its own challenges. Like one time we were posted in Cooch Behar, North Bengal, and Behram he was commanding the battalion. They'd gone for training to Bhutan. And we ladies form a very strong group. We stay together, help each other out through these separations. And we were jumping with joy because somebody said they're coming back 2 weeks early. Sure enough, the next day, the whole convoy came, they were back, and we were thrilled. Oh, they've come back sooner than expected. Well, guess what? No. Behram said, don't be so happy. Tomorrow, or within 3-4 days, they were being inducted for counterinsurgency operations in Mizoram. And as per the army etiquette, you don't ask too much because you'll never be told. It was like, when will you come back? We don't know. And that's part of army life. Out of 30 years of being married in India, I think we spent a good 15 or more years separated because they're deployed all the time. You never know when they'll come back. And by the age of 12, my daughter had changed 5 schools. So that's army life, but it's a wonderful life.
Thank you very much for sharing that, Auntie. Mrs. Zenobia Panteki is the wife of Airward Brigadier Behram Panteki. I'll just spotlight Uncle Behram for reference, if I may, although he's probably trying to, yeah, he won't unmute, but let me spotlight him briefly. There we are. Who was our speaker last year, a very erudite and service-oriented person.
Thank you. Thank you.
We are very fortunate today to have people from 5, I think 6 different continents, some of whom are awake at 12 o'clock in the night right now, others who joined at, I think, 7 in the morning. And our audience includes the youth and elders, and we have a splendid person from India, Varun Pastakia. Over to you, Varun. Thank you for being with us.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, the respected speakers. I am Varun Pastakia. I'm currently pursuing a bachelor's in science in psychology. I'm a first year student, and it's an honor to be present in front of all the distinguished officers who protect their respective nations, not only during war but during crisis and uncertainty. I'm truly grateful for the same.
Phone Uncle Koshi. Ask him if he's going to speak.
Who?
I will do my
We-
level best to serve as the future youth of the community, to carry on by building bridges, not barriers, and continue legacy of service and unity. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Nazar uncle, Veera auntie, and Mohan uncle. It was truly the best birthday gift inviting me to this panel.
Thank you very much, Varun, and we hope you have a lovely year ahead. You shared a very special thought of what each of us can do to support our armed forces. And indeed, we are their support if only we consider ourselves and ask ourselves that question, what can we do? If anybody else would like to share, this is your floor. Major General Pitawala, I believe you were on our panel last year, so you'd like to say something?
I'll just 3 quick points. One is, of course, I must compliment all the speakers for excellent discourse that they have given. My compliments to all of them. And 3 quick points from my side. One is, of course, sustainable development should be one of our primary goals. And it's actually it's a matter of necessity. But unfortunately, today we see our development going haywire. Forests getting depleted, mountains, without trees. So this is a matter of concern, and it's a matter of concern for all of us, and it needs to be addressed. Short-term profits should not take precedence over our long-term gains. The second issue I like to say something is about the challenges that our armed forces face today, and in that the changing nature of warfare, which we just saw now presently in Ops Sindoor. And this makes our task more challenging. Conventional wars have become more lethal, more AI driven, more drone, a lot of dronery in them, which we just saw in the last war. Multi-domain. This is a very big challenge, different from what we used to have it during our days in the army. Land, sea, air, space, cyber, electronic warfare have all taken the front seat today. This makes our task more and more difficult. And the third point I would like to say is what keeps the army going? Why are we always successful? Amongst there are many factors to that, but I think one of the most important factor is our regimental ethos and our military legacies of service before self, bravery, valor, sacrifice. All these things are imbibed in the character of a soldier, and uh, they go from one generation to another, and that is the strength of our army and that armed forces, and that's why we don't fail. So I think it's hats off, and as General Patel said, that all of us would like to, rebirth, come back to the same tradition, same army, same thing. It's a lovely profession to serve in. So that's all I have to add. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Major General Cyrus Pitawala. We have people from different parts of the world. If any of you would now like to ask a question or share, I will be grateful to you. I have 2 questions and I will reserve them for later. Uncle Casey Asper, you're at 12:15 in Singapore. If there's anything you'd like to say, please feel free to
No,
do
I
so.
think, first of all, thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting. And it was really heartwarming to listen to all the speakers. I think what they have contributed, what their families have gone through, and their even siblings or their children or grandchildren must be proud to be what they are today. I really want to say the congratulations to all the dedication and sacrifice all the people who have done. Thank you so much for keeping the world at peace. Thank you so much. Bless you. Yes, done, Panaba.
Yes, Dan Padnaba, there's your Shadbad. Just trying to look through if anybody else has raised their hand. Okay. Until another question comes up or a share. I have a question for Major General Cyrus Pitawala. Sorry, Major General Nauza Patel. There is Commodore Koshi Varghese from Cochin. It's just unmuted. If you've got something to say, Uncle, please do. Major General Nauza Patel, you mentioned that your son and your daughter-in-law both serve in the armed forces.
Yes.
Would you be able to share a little bit on their life or something that you could tell us about? Why would the child of somebody in the armed forces, a child who changes school every year or every year and a half, often mid-semester, why would a child like that want to go back, who lives without a room, without a cupboard very often, for most of their life because the father's either mid-transfer or packing up the house? Why would such a child want to join the armed forces?
See, there are two things to it. One is that if you stay in the same school, like many civil people who are in one place, they study in the same school all through 12th class, same college. But with us, it is different because it is so exciting. Every 2 years, you go to a different place, you meet different people, The people, otherwise in civil, they feel that every time you go, a student has to prove himself to the new batch of teachers every 2 years. But that's a challenge. It's actually very, very good experience of moving so often. That is one. And secondly, the children also see the ethos, which has been what General Cyrus said, that what makes us stand apart is the ethos. So children are seeing this, that if my dad goes away on a posting to a field area, I and my mother and my other siblings are not left on their own. There is a solid support system available. That is very important. And on top of all this is that urge to serve the motherland through the armed forces. That is why most of them keep joining. Most of the children would like to join, rather. Can't hear you, ma'am.
Brigadier Arvind Pantaki, please go ahead. You have a question?
I just want to highlight the involvement of the army at the highest level, at the Chief of Army Staff's level, and this is directly linked to our faith, Zoroastrianism. If you recall, in Yemen, there was a fire temple by Adenwala. In 1967, when British left Yemen and the communists took over, the country went into a chaos. And a point came up that that consecrated fire has to be brought back to India. The question was how, and time was of prime importance. And it was at that time, one of the options was that let us involve the army, Indian army. And I remember Mrs. Gandhi was the prime minister, Mr. Y.B. Chavan was the foreign minister, and the army chief was General Manekshaw. They had made plans, everything was moving well, but for some political reasons, finally, that plan was not followed. And if you all remember, the fire was brought by a special Air India aircraft. So what my point is, whether it is calamities, natural disasters, or normal things, even to the extent where a religion is involved. So the army is always there at the beck and call of, so far as the country is concerned, so far as the faith is concerned. And second point is, this year, Paralympics was held in Paris. And one of my soldiers, he'd lost both his legs in a minefield, took part in in javelin throw. And he brought a bronze medal for India. That's all. Thank you.
Very, very inspiring. Thank you very much for sharing that. We have a question from Mr. Mohan. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I don't have a question, but I have an observation. Somebody said like why children who change skills in the army, why would they do that or that? I'll give you, I have worked in hotels for a long time, and
he's speaking.
and we tell our managers that if you have worked.
Mr. Mohan,
Yeah.
Mr. Mohan, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Please, will you go to Auntie, who's registered as Peace, because it's echoing through your computers, and you've just turned your video off. If you sit with Auntie, then we'll see both of you, and we'll be able to hear you. Can't see you there.
I'm coming.
Thank you.
Yeah, is it better now?
It is great big delay for me.
Now we can see and hear you. Thank you.
No, I was saying that I have worked with hotels, and many times when we do a career chat for the managers, we tell them that more that you work in parts of you go more personally, you will be more confident. We have always found that children of the army who come to work with the hotels, they are much more confident, much more students who have been only to one school. And and that's a very stark difference. I mean, so therefore, when General Patel says that it's always a challenge to go to different schools and prove yourself, that's the process which makes them different from other children. And yes, that's very true. And other if they come to private companies, that's what is encouraged.
A very valid point. Thank you very much, Mr. Mohan. What do you do?
Oh, now I consult hotels. I in HR, and I was with hotels Oberoi and with Leela as a vice president HR, and that has been my life, my bread and butter, everything, um, and a pleasure to have worked with them.
You
So
are
that
very qualified in HR to have seen many, many people, and your observation is therefore not based on 5 or 6, 10 people, but probably many hundreds. So thank you for sharing that observation, sir.
my pleasure, my pleasure. Thank you.
I have a final question for Colonel Behram Sahukar. Colonel Sahukar, you mentioned the George Marshall Center, Garmisch.
Yes.
And you talked about reparation rules, reconstruction, and the most important concept of well-being. Focusing on this idea of well-being, while I know that you're a specialist in counterinsurgency and terrorism, my focus now is on well-being. What can you tell us about preventing wars, about treating people right, so that we look after their mind, so that peace is maintained, or indeed people want to contribute towards peace? Your 40, 50 years of service, you have a PhD. What can you guide?
Yeah, I'd just like to correct you. One thing, I don't have a PhD. I was doing my PhD. I have an MPhil. But in the middle of my PhD on Israel and India counterterrorism policies, the Indian parliament got attacked by militants after 9/11. And so all study leave, every type of leave was cancelled. And we were on the borders for about almost 11 months waiting for an offensive. So I did not finish my PhD. Once you leave the university, it's very difficult to get back on, especially if you're in the service. And I served for 3-4 years after that. So I have an MPhil and started my PhD, but never completed it. So, but thank you, doctor, for that. You promoted me.
A career in the armed forces, if I may add. Thank you for the correction, but a career in the armed forces is probably worth many PhDs put together.
Well, yes, I don't deny that, and I would rejoin again if I ever had the chance, and I would join the parachute regiment again. The Maroon Beret is something that drew me. And just a matter of aside, if you have the time, in the NDA, I was given the Navy. So, and in our days when we joined the NDA, that was in June '66, we called the Navy the Silent Service. And my aim of joining the military was to become a field marshal in 5 days, win the Victoria Cross if they allowed me to, the Paramveer Chakra, the Mahavir Chakra, the Veer Chakra, and everything else in about a month, and retire, to my country home as a retired field marshal and write books and give lectures. But of course, real life is not the same. And I changed from the Navy to the Army, and my squadron commander was a naval officer. God bless him. He said, "Look, here people are changing from the Army to the Navy, and you're swimming against the tide from now only. So maybe you're right. The Navy is not for you. You better change." So he kept his file for about a week, and then he forwarded it to the Army. And I'm never looked back. Sometimes I did get a twinge of jealousy when I went to Bombay and saw my classmates sitting in a nice little air-conditioned aircraft carrier, the Vikrant. And here I was sweating, going back to a sweaty, horrible area of Nagaland or the Northeast or in Kashmir, where it was very, very cold. But other than that, no regrets at all. So the part about the George Marshall Center, it's in Garmisch, southern Germany, in Bavaria, Garmisch-Partenkirchen. It was an area that Adolf Hitler in 1936 actually made a winter resort for the Winter Olympics. And so it is a twin city of Garmisch-Partenkirchen. So, and it is a joint US-German, now it's a teaching establishment. It was a base after the Second World War where the Americans had occupied it, and now it's a joint teaching establishment and a military base. And George C. Marshall, after whom the center is named, was, as you might know, he was the five-star general who orchestrated the American involvement in World War II after Pearl Harbor, and also the Lend-Lease agreement to keep Britain, China, and Russia in the war by giving them Lend-Lease, the equipment to keep them in the war to fight, because America did not join the war until after Pearl Harbor. And after Roosevelt died, Truman appointed George Marshall, General Marshall, as the Secretary of State. And after the war ended in May 1945 in Europe and in September 1945 in Japan, in the Far East, Marshall did not want to repeat the follies or the mistakes of the First World War, Armistice Day, and the Treaty of Versailles, which made Germany pay very, very heavy reparations and basically emasculated the country and made it feel very low and deprived. And that, as I said, started the beginnings of stirrings of the Second World War. So George Marshall said, okay, now we have won the war. We have bombed, we let loose nuclear bombs on Japan. But Europe was the place where, because the most devastation as far as the Americans and the British were concerned. And so let us have a plan to reconstruct Europe and reconstruct the economies and give back the economy, the industrialization, the food, because people were really hurting, especially in all the war-ravaged countries. And every country agreed for the Marshall Plan. And so this was, for this operation, which lasted for 3 years, George Marshall was given the Nobel Prize for Peace. And he's very much respected even today as a very good general and a very, very fine Secretary of State. So that is the background of George Marshall. But I would like to just add, if I may, if you have 2 minutes more, is just to add to General Patel and General Cyrus Pitawala, and of course, General Pitawala and I go back a long, long way. He did guide me a little bit in applying for the United Nations long ago when he was in the UN. Is that for the UN peacekeeping forces, the army or the personnel have to be retrained, because we are trained to fight, especially in the infantry. The infantry's role is to close with the enemy and destroy him. So it's a very close quarter battle. That's the role of the infantry, is to close with the enemy and destroy him. Now, when you are deployed on peacekeeping missions, which is very important as well, because there's a just war and there's also a lasting just peace. And there's a saying from the Romans that said that if you desire peace, then prepare for war. And the more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war. That's an old saying also. So the Indian Army, why it has been so respected and done so well, if I may add to what the other two speakers said, is because we are a very professional army. And we believe in keeping the ethos of the army alive. And so what I remember before 71 war, when we were all concentrated to go in, Field Marshal Manekshaw, then General Manekshaw, visited us in the forward lines. And he gave us one very, very strict instruction saying, I know you're going to go into enemy held territory. I know you're going to win. But there will be a lot of villages which you might want to, in anger, burn down, desecrate. There'll be a lot of civilians. There might be a lot of ladies. Don't forget, we are the Indian Army. We have a standard to maintain, a professionalism and zeal. And if you have any thoughts of doing anything that is not correct and that will bring down the Army's name, well, put your hands in your pockets and think of Sam, what Sam will do to you if you get caught. And that remained with me before we went into operations. It was very, very, yeah, it was true. He actually came and told us that put your hands in your pockets and think of Sam and think what Sam will do to you if you've done something wrong. So I think that professionalism of the Indian Army and its mentality of humanity and keeping our profession and our humanity separate and not desecrating our victories and respecting the other side. Um, and this all, we learned all this from, again, our leaders, our seniors, and even from personal examples where time is given, we honor the war dead the same way as we honor our dead. That might sound very, very paradoxical to civilians, but that's not the fact. If you go to the Anzac Cove in Gallipoli, where some Indian forces fought, mainly for the Anzac, the Australians, New Zealand, and the British, there is a saying by Kamal Ataturk, which says that at Anzac Cove, I don't want to give the exact, it's a little long, but it says very clearly that, okay, you all the Mehmets, that is and all the Johnnies. The Johnnies was a term given to the British, like a Tommy, and Mehmet was the term given to the Turkish Javans and the soldiers who fell. It says the Mehmets and the Johnnies fought together over this piece of land, and they lie here together. So my message is to the mothers whose sons lie on our land, not to worry about your sons, because now since they fought together and they lie together, they are now our sons as well. And we will look after them as if they were our sons. So even though you might grieve, but be assured that they will be loved and respected as our own sons. And of course, it was Ataturk, Kamal Ataturk, who fought at Gallipoli as a colonel, and whose policy after Turkey became a republic said that peace at home and peace abroad. That was his policy for Turkey. So he was another peacemaker, because the just peace and the lasting peace is more important than winning a war, in my book. And just to keep the peace with the UN, as General Patel has mentioned, that India was the largest contributor, has been the largest contributor to UN peacekeeping missions. And one person, if I have time to mention, General Inderjit Rikhi, who had started after he was the commander of the forces of Gaza, where my unit was located in 1956 and 57 after the Suez crisis. And my battalion again was located in UNIFIL in Lebanon to maintain the peace between Israel and Lebanon. But he started what is called the International Peace Academy in New York after he retired, Inderjit Rikhi. And and became his first president. And Lester Pearson, the Prime Minister of Canada, Canada was another country that contributed maximum to UN peacekeeper. He has a training establishment in Canada, and also in Delhi, United Service Institution has a training area for the UN peacekeeping. But my point is that for us to change our attitude from fighting a war to maintaining the peace, you have to really relearn what you learned in the academy or in the army or in the battalion. That's a very important aspect, and it's almost a 6 month to a year's training that normally we undergo. I think General Pitawala might bear me out and add something more if there is patience and time to listen to more of us retired officers speaking. We can go on for hours if necessary. We have time on our hands. Okay, all right. So much for that. Have I answered the question, Dr. Koka? Thank you for that, for the question and the observation. Have I answered it?
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. You mentioned sons of land. We have a son whose father has served in the forces. I'd like to end the session with a thought from Daniel Wheatley on anything he might want to share of a child whose father serves and whose mother was in a concentration camp or a prisoner of war. Prisoner of war.
Well, bless you, Dr. Karishma, for that. And although I have not served, as our other distinguished speakers have, in the armed forces, my father, as I mentioned, served in the Royal Artillery, and some of my great uncles lie alongside, Indian soldiers, Hindu, Zoroastrian, Muslim soldiers in the great cemeteries of northern France and Belgium, serving with the Canadian regiment. My mother my grandparents were living in the Channel Islands, British Islands next to the French coast, and the German forces, of course, invaded in 1940. and because my grandfather was serving in the very small Guernsey Militia Regiment, which had no real military resources to resist the German invasion. They were taken to a prisoner of war camp in Germany. They were treated quite well. They were treated with Red Cross parcels, Slavic, Polish, Russian nationals in the camp next to them were in labor camps where they all died. Of course, that had they been Jewish or Roma, they would have been taken to the death camps. But it is because American and Free French forces fought to liberate that town that my mother was liberated through the sacrifice of service personnel, and in both branches of my family. I would not have gone to Southern Africa, to Swaziland, and had the opening up to learning I had then, had my father not served in the Royal Artillery Regiment of the British Armed Forces. But I think I would not be here. I think I would not be alive if it had not been for the courage and the heroism of soldiers of many nations, many religions, that were willing to serve and make the ultimate sacrifice in the liberation of Europe from fascism. But I want to align myself very much with what distinguished Major General Patel and distinguished Colonel Saha have said. It is those who have seen the bitterness of war and those military veterans who have often contributed the greatest ideas towards beating swords into plowshares. And I hope that we may see the world move forward to a greater understanding of this, but we will need military professionals to maintain that peace, and no army on the face of the world has contributed more knowledge, more people, and more sacrifice to UN efforts at peacekeeping than the Indian Armed Forces. It is a great honour for me to be present with you today, and I will hold you all in my prayers on the 11th of November as I hold silence for the veterans and all those who fell. So I thank you very much for your grace and tolerance, and it's been an honour to be with you this day.
Thank you very much, Daniel. As we come to the end today, let us give gratitude to the Zoroastrian Trust Funds of Europe, who make it possible for us to mark Armistice Day and celebrate the idea that together we are stronger, together we will maintain peace, and together we can progress towards making the world a better place sustainably. And for that, we thank the armed forces for giving us the freedoms, or maintaining our freedoms, giving us the courage in the darkest times to light a candle, to light a flame within our mind. And may we all light that flame of love and peace in the minds of others, so that when they feel secure, when we all feel secure together, we build a more resilient, peaceful, and happy society. As the great Zoroastrian saying goes, happiness comes to one who brings happiness to others. So thank you all to the armed forces and their families for bringing happiness to all. You may stay on after the recording ends and